Welcome back to another episode of A Better Way of Earning, where work, life, and money get real. I am your host, Dr. Michelle S. Thomas, and today's episode is going to be a little different. This was not necessarily the episode I planned to record next, but it has been weighing heavily on my heart because I truly believe someone out there listening may need this conversation at this moment in time. Today, my friends, I want to talk about the middle. And when I say the middle, I'm not only talking about middle age or middle management, although we will touch on that too. But what I'm actually talking about is that uncomfortable space between where you started and where you're trying to go. That space, like the middle of building a career, the middle of growing a business, the middle of long term relationships, the middle of raising that family. How about the middle of pursuing a degree, the middle of healing, the middle of changing aspects of your life? The middle is the place where the excitement of starting has worn off, but you haven't yet reached the results that you were hoping for. And I think we need to talk about this because we've created a culture that celebrates beginnings and endings while rarely acknowledging what happens between those dots. We celebrate, I launched, and then we celebrate, I made it. But people rarely post year four, still working on it. Or nobody creates a highlight reel around, I'm doing everything I know to do right now, but nothing seems to be happening. Nobody really wants to post that I'm successful, I'm grateful, but damn it, I'm also tired. But listen, that's real life. And one of the greatest mistakes that we can make is interpreting a normal period of slow growth as evidence that we've chosen the wrong path. So today, I want to give you permission to acknowledge something. You love what you're building and still are able to become tired of building it. Anybody out there? Can I get a heart, a chat, a amen, something? Just somebody. I know there's somebody feeling this. It doesn't mean that you're not appreciative because you can be grateful for your career, yet still question it. You can absolutely love your spouse and still experience difficult seasons within your marriage. You can believe deeply in your business and your business model and still have days when you wonder whether you want to keep doing it all. Sometimes you simply are in the middle. So let's cover the public playbook. Today's public playbook tells us if you're doing what you love, it shouldn't feel like work. And I'm going to tell you, I strongly disagree. Sometimes doing what you love is incredibly hard work. Sometimes purpose becomes exhausting. Sometimes leadership is frustrating. And sometimes entrepreneurship is extremely lonely. Sometimes the career you've dreamed about comes with responsibilities that you never imagined. And sometimes the thing that you've prayed for becomes the very thing that requires you to grow into someone you have not yet become. This does not automatically mean that it's wrong, it means that you're human. Social media can make that very difficult to remember. We're constantly exposed to snapshots of other people's outcomes: the promotion, the new house, the business launch, the six-figure month, the engagement, the graduation, the vacation, the award. But we rarely see the Tuesday afternoons when they sit in their car wondering whether any of this was worth it. We experience the harvest season, but we don't see much of the cultivation. And when we compare someone else's visible harvest to our invisible cultivation, our own progress can begin to feel inadequate. And that's a dangerous space to be in because you can abandon something that is actually growing simply because it isn't growing fast enough for you or anyone else to see it. This brings us to our success blocker for this week, the progress illusion. The progress illusion is the belief that if you cannot see immediate evidence of growth, growth must not be happening. That belief can make us incredibly impatient with ourselves. We start asking, why am I not further along? Why hasn't this happened yet? Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I chose the wrong career. Maybe everyone else knows something that I don't. Maybe I should just quit. But here's what we tend to forget. Some of the most important forms of growth aren't immediately visible. Confidence grows quietly. Competence grows quietly. Relationships grow quietly. Reputation grows quietly. Career capital grows quietly. Leadership capital grows quietly. And sometimes opportunities are developing behind doors you don't even know exist yet. So I want you to remember lack of visible movement does not always mean lack of progress. Let's do what I call the middle check. When you're tempted to make a major decision because you feel stuck, don't immediately ask, should I quit? Ask these 4 questions to help you better analyze where you are, where you want to go, and whether progress is actually happening. Number one, the first and foremost, ask yourself, am I tired? Because, my friends, exhaustion can make everything look like a failure. Number two, am I still learning something? If you're still developing skills, relationships, judgment, experience, or career capital, growth may actually still be happening. Number three, and this is very important, has the goal changed or has the excitement changed? Those are not the same thing. Excitement naturally fluctuates, purpose can remain the same. And then finally, number four, do I need to leave or do I need to adjust? Sometimes the answer isn't quitting. Sometimes you need to rest, you need boundaries, you need training, you need a different strategy, you need to have a different conversation. Maybe you need some help. How about a mentor? How about a new responsibility? Or maybe simply you need more time. Before you abandon the destination, check whether you simply need to change how you're traveling. Let's bring this into the workplace. Maybe you entered a company excited about your future. You learn quickly, you receive recognition, you were promoted, and then you reach the middle. Now, I want to pause for a second and go back and remind you that the learning quickly, the recognition, and the promotion all built was stimulated by the dopamine effect. It felt good, right? The spotlight was on you. You were the new star. All that dopamine and adrenaline made you feel good. But then when you reach the middle, when you're no longer the new employee, you're no longer senior leadership either. You're carrying more responsibility, but you don't necessarily have more authority. You may be responsible for implementing decisions that you didn't make, nor do you agree with. You're managing other people's expectations above you and below you. And suddenly you start thinking, there has to be something better than this. And maybe there is. But before you abandon the job, I want you to examine something we discussed earlier in this season: your career capital. What are you gaining where you are? Are you learning how organizations operate? Are you learning conflict resolution? Are you developing people? Are you learning how to manage budgets? Are you building executive relationships? Are you gaining an industry knowledge? Are you developing a better judgment? Because sometimes what feels like stagnation is actually integration. You are no longer collecting isolated skills, you're learning how those skills work together. That's often what prepares someone for excellent leadership. And that brings us to another important distinction. There is a difference between being stuck and being planted. Being stuck means there is no meaningful movement, development, alignment, or opportunity. However, being planted can look very similar from the surface, but underneath, roots are developing in a strong, permanent, and healthy manner. Discernment matters in these circumstances because sometimes you need the courage to leave, and sometimes you need the maturity to stay. Knowledge builder number two: the stay, shift, or step framework. So when you're struggling in the middle, consider three possibilities. Stay. There is still meaningful growth available where you are. Maybe the season that you're in isn't finished. Ask, can I still learn here? Shift. The destination still makes sense, but your strategy no longer does. Maybe you need a different role, a different schedule, a different product, a different approach, a new boundary. Ask yourself, what needs to change for my growth to continue? Step. You've learned what the season was meant to teach you, and remaining there is now limiting your growth or compromising something important like your values. Ask yourself, what evidence tells me it's time to move forward? Notice something? None of those decisions are based purely on your emotions. Feelings provide information, but feelings should never be the only thing that you weigh in as your deciding vote. Entrepreneurs, I especially need you to hear me right now. The beginning of entrepreneurship can be intoxicating. You have the idea, you design the logo, you build the website or the landing pages or the funnels, you announce the business. Everybody says, yay, congratulations. And then comes the middle. The likes slow down, sales begin to fluctuate, expenses begin to show up and build. Customers no longer are responding. Marketing does not work the way that you expected it. Something you spent 6 months creating barely gets noticed. And suddenly, entrepreneurship isn't feeling very inspirational. Welcome, my friends, to the entrepreneurship middle. This is where many entrepreneurs make one of two mistakes. They either quit something that needs more time or continue doing something that clearly needs to change because they've confused persistence with strategy. Now, neither one of those is healthy. The answer isn't never quit, because sometimes quitting is absolutely the right decision. The better lesson or the better measurable for you is don't quit without learning why you're quitting. Are you leaving because the model isn't viable? That's information. Are you leaving because your values have changed? That's information. Are you leaving because the opportunity cost has become too high? That's information. Or are you leaving because you're simply tired, embarrassed, comparing yourself, not receiving enough validation or dopamine effect, impatient? Those, my friends, are two vastly different conversations. The success blocker I want to address with entrepreneurship is the comparison compression. Social media has compressed our perception of time. We watch someone go from, I had an idea, to look at my $1 million company in a 60-second video. What we don't see were the 12 years between those clips. That creates this unrealistic expectation. We start believing if I'm talented, this should happen quickly. If I'm called to do this, doors should constantly be opening. If the business is good and the business model is great, customers should immediately come. If I'm doing the right thing, I should not ever struggle. None of those things are necessarily true. Time is not always evidence that something is failing. Sometimes time is part of what makes something sustainable. I teach, again, in my entrepreneur incubator class, that before you decide to what I call walk in someone else's shoes. Because oftentimes we build businesses or concepts off of things that we've seen other people be successful in. We've all seen it. It's all across YouTube and Facebook and even Google. You can always see the 10 top businesses to start in 2026 or the businesses that's going to be low cost to start and high yield in revenue. All of these things that we migrate to and we buy into it without doing our own proper research. And what happens is if you're not familiar with the industry and the business cycles of said industry, you might be setting yourself up for a misrepresentation of what time frame this is going to take to reach your level of success. And so there are some operations, there are some industries, there are some things that you're selling that the ramp up time, the nurturing time, the development time is going to be longer than something that is a shorter, lower cost sale. Let me give you an example. So, if you are selling high end products that are tens of thousands of dollars, your nurturing stage is going to be months, possibly even years, to build up the relationships and the trust with the very people that will buy your products or services. If you're selling something that costs someone $5.99, well, the sales cycle is obviously going to be shorter because it's less of a thought process or less of a heavy burden for someone to consider to use your product. However, with that $5.99 product, you also have to understand in the world of the internet now, you are no longer competing with the neighboring store or the neighboring hairdresser or the neighboring person that's selling something similar. People now have options and they can go anywhere around the world and buy the products. Yes, your product may be better developed, your product may be a better brand or whatever your marketing tool is. But because not only are entrepreneurs in this compression mindset, your consumers are also in the compression mindset. and they try to find the quickest, fastest, cheapest option, even though they know that it may not be worth it. When I met my husband way long ago, I was a single mom with 3 kids. And again, I told y'all in this podcast before, I did not have the opportunity or the luxury to find a nice career path for me. She had to get jobs because some kids need to eat and the daycare need to be paid and the lights need to stay on. So when I met him, I remember it was time to get school clothes for the boys starting school. And so I told him, I said, I'm headed to Walmart. And he said, well, why are you going there to buy the clothes? And I was like, I don't understand the question, sir. I mean, I'm going to buy them some clothes. That's within my bank account. I'm just saying. And he began to teach me the value of choosing products depending on what I needed. And so what he talked about is you may go and spend something that's less expensive, but how many times are you going to have to repeat that purchase opposed to waiting and buying something that costs a little bit more but is going to last a lot longer. And this was a conversation to a woman who wasn't even living check by check. I was surviving 2 days after the check because it was gone. And so I had to sit in that for a minute because at first I was offended because I was like, you don't know my life. And that's cute because you don't have the level of responsibility that I had. But I started literally, I created this little spreadsheet to really map out the cost of things, inexpensive things that I was buying. And I mapped out the frequency that I would have to go and rebuy the same type of shirt or sneakers or whatever. And then I compared to what I was spending monthly, quarterly, annually to what I would have spent for the item that I imagine was out of my price range. So that was just a little nugget for me. I'm not really telling anybody how to price your things or whatever. What I want you to get to understand is as an entrepreneur, it is critical within your study, within your evaluation, within building your business plan for you to really go in depth and understand the sales cycle, the buying cycle, and the business cycle of the industries that you are entering into. Because oftentimes we have this misconception, again, because we see these compressed results that's all around us in every type of media, but we don't know the years or the gaps in between where there was nothing happening for them either. So just want to give you that little piece of nugget. Again, just something from the corner of Dr. Michelle. So let's talk about knowledge builder number 3, the evidence audit. When your emotions tell you nothing is happening, look for evidence. Ask, what do I know today that I did not know 1 year ago? What can I do today that I could not do 1 year ago? Who knows my work today that did not know I even existed a year ago? What relationships have I developed? What mistakes am I no longer making? What opportunities can I now recognize that I would have missed before? That's growth. I tell my kids, and if you watch the talk show, you know that I've talked about this. When my kids were in school and they would come home and complain about the teacher, I would explain to them that you can even learn from a bad experience and a bad teacher, even if that lesson is what not to repeat. So when we're measuring growth and progress in our businesses, things may have happened in a negative with a negative effect. But if you learn from that negative effect, then you are still growing. Does that make sense? It may not feel good. It may not be the space that you want to. I call it stretching. Without having that experience, especially early on, when you're only spending a little bit of money in the business, If that experience prolongs itself and happens when you are building that $1 million business, the cost of that learning lesson is tremendously higher than the cost of learning it in the beginning. So keep that in mind. Maybe growth hasn't reached your bank account yet. Maybe it hasn't changed your title at work yet. Maybe you're receiving limited applause or even no applause. But do not overlook the career capital, the business capital, simply because it has not converted into financial capital yet. That conversion does not always happen immediately. So, because we are that podcast that just talks about everything, let's talk about the middle of relationships and life, man. So, the middle just doesn't limit itself to careers, it shows up everywhere. Long term relationships experience middles, parenting experiences middles, friendships experience middles, personal development experiences middles, even healing and grief experience middles. At the beginning, you're determined to change. Eventually, you begin experiencing the benefits of that change. But in between those 2 points, there's often a long period where you're doing the work without yet experiencing the reward. Let's talk about weight loss. Come on. Can I get an amen? You start out and what you're doing, immediately your body begins to show some shifts and changes in your weight loss because this you're doing different activities, you're eating different, etc. But then your body experiences what everyone calls the plateau because the repetitiveness of the exercise or what you're eating or whatever, your body has now adapted to that and it needs something different to recharge that weight loss progress. But if you're just going to keep repeating the same thing and you've reached your plateau and no one's explained to you that that middle happens within weight loss, you then become discouraged. And then you go back to old habits and watch the weight come back on again in your marriage, in your long term relationship. It was exciting in the beginning, the honeymoon period. Oh my God, this is wonderful. I love you. I cannot stand anything outside of you. You make my world. I just want to gaze at you. You hang up. No, you hang up. No, you hang up first. Oh, you're just so amazing. And then somewhere in that 10-year mark, it's like, oh my God, I like, why do you even chew like that? Like, what? At night, I can't sleep because you breathe too loud. Or every little thing, like, why does your sock over here? I have hampers right here. I just don't understand why nobody's clothes makes it to it. You're in the middle. And at that point, you have to be able to have the words to not only articulate that in a healthy manner without attacking each other, but then develop new changes and adaptations to make it through that point. Because what people rarely talk about, especially in relationships, is every single day, each one of you are changing, whether that's physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, economically. Just because you're married or a couple does not mean that y'all's growth happens simultaneously or at the same time. Oftentimes in long term relationships, one person in a relationship develops first or faster than the other person. So then there's this gap of disconnection and frustration because I don't understand why I'm getting to a better space and you're still stuck in the old ways from 10, 15, 20 years ago. Well, people are different. People interpret things different. People have different triggers and pain points and lifestyles that they experienced before you got together. And if there's not any empathy in that growth process, that stretching process, any of that, then the middle can become longer than necessary and very, very painful. And oftentimes, these are the times that we then go to the courthouse and file for divorce. Not because we don't like each other, but because we feel like we no longer have anything in common. Same thing happens with your kids. And that doesn't make you a bad parent. Like, I wish people stop sitting around here trying to judge somebody's parenting because you're tired of your kids. It happens. You're exhausted. Listen, I had 7 kids, 2 dogs, a cat, and I promise you a partridge in the pear tree somewhere in the closet somewhere at one moment in time. So that was a lot of activity. That was a lot of homework. That was a lot of kids fighting. That was a lot of food. It was a lot. And I'm one person. I was physically drained. Then they became teenagers, and 6 of them were boys. And I don't know. No one still can explain to me how you can take a shower at night and be asleep. Like, you didn't run a marathon, you didn't play a football game, but you just wake up funky. Like, I don't understand that. Like, help me. so it's so there was like a requirement when we would relocate to a different state that my major requirement for us buying a house was I told my husband the laundry room has to be right outside the garage. No playing. Like that's a non-negotiable because them boys would come home for practice and literally the amount and level of functified funk, you guys, is just astronomical. I would ask them as I would drive with my trying to get my nose out a cracked window. I don't care. Even if it was like 15 degrees outside, I didn't care. I need to crack the window. And I would ask them all the time, you don't smell that? Anyway, I digress. I'm trying to make you laugh, but I'm also trying to give you at least some insight into human nature when it comes to relationships, whether that is a love relationship, whether that is a friendship, whether that is parental relationships, even with your own siblings and your own family. You are going to experience time where you're going to outgrow the imagery that they want to continue to put you back into. But that doesn't mean you throw your family away. So why do you throw your relationship away? Just something to think about. Just, one of them things that make you say, hmm. But back to the topic at hand. This is why pacing yourself matters. New parents, if you got newborns, and I get it, they're cute, they're cuddly, they're all excited, etc. And then you can't wait for the milestones of them moving and walking, etc. Um, Let me start before even the walking, because when you're pregnant as a woman, every woman sits there and can't wait for this baby to be born. I can't wait to see my baby or whatever. But what you don't realize, what nobody really tells you, is traveling is so much easier when you're pregnant because everything's just kind of with you. Once you deliver that baby and you're sleep deprived, going to the places like the grocery store or dropping other kids off at school or even going to the daycare or whatever, it's almost like a logistical nightmare. You hear what I'm saying? For anybody who hasn't had kids or anybody that don't understand why your friend who just had a baby always has that messy bun on top of her head and she can't remember her name and she always late. I'm just trying to help you with that. It's because now that one baby, that one little tiny infant that is still sleeping, doesn't really care a lot about what's happening around it, just feed me, change me. But that one little baby comes with like a military grade level of packing to get that baby into the car. I'm just saying. So the same thing happens even in parenthood because everything's all exciting, but then it's the burden of no sleep and trying to figure out what food that they're going to eat and what milk is going to be right for them. And then they start walking, which is an exciting milestone until you realize that now where you always could see that baby, you are now running like a mad person trying to find out where the baby went. Like I promise you, a second ago, she was right there. Just right there. Now, where is she at now? Now you're up on the tables and looking behind TVs and whatever. And the baby thinks it's cute. Into the toddler stage and the attitude. And then let's not even address when the hormones kick in preteens. I remember I was at work one day and I was talking to a friend of mine who was a single father, and he was talking about how close him and his baby girl was. And I just told her, I said, because you're my friend, I just want to prepare you. When she turns about 12, you know, 11, 12, 13, she's not going to like you. And he was like, nonsense. My baby girl was always love me. She might love you, but you won't recognize who that little kid is because at 11, 12, and 13, everything that you do, she'll hate. It, their friends become more important than you. And we followed up when she did turn, and he was like, okay, so you're right. But just another piece of information. But again, the point that I'm trying to make is that you have to learn to pace yourself and to really have realistic expectations in relationships, having kids, and friendships. They are still a individual human being. Just because you have a marriage certificate or you delivered them or you created them or whatever the situation is, you do not own who they are. And so if you're not equipped for grace, if you're not equipped for patience, then you might want to delay creating these relationships until you are, because it takes a lot. I went from, if something wasn't working, work more, stay up later, try harder, produce more, keep moving. Over the stages of my life, what I've learned now is recognizing that sometimes progress requires the exact opposite. I had to learn to rest. I know it sounds funny, but I had to learn how to rest. I didn't know how to rest. I thought grinding it out at home and at work was the solution because that's what I was taught. If you work hard, you're going to get the results. Well, I wasn't getting the results. I was just exhausted. I was angry. I was frustrated with everybody. And I was madder at especially my family because I didn't understand why they didn't recognize how hard I was working for them. But instead of getting angry or continuing feeling that, I had to reevaluate my expectations from the relationships that I had. So I had to learn how to rest. I learned how to reflect. I learned that creating a little bit of distance is okay. It doesn't mean that I've abandoned anybody. It doesn't mean that I don't care. I just need some space. And I learned how to ask for that. Sometimes, especially as women, as mothers, as wives, and all the titles that's placed on us, no one ever taught us how to, in a healthy, lovingly way, ask for space. But my friends, the biggest shift that I had to do was I had to change my perspective. What I just told you about the fact that even though you're married to this individual, that you are friends, you've been friends for decades with these individuals, or you actually delivered this human being, you still do not own them. They have their own mind. They have their own thoughts. They have their own emotions. They have their own grief, sorrow, expectations, and things that they're going to. So I had to change my perspective. There are moments when the most productive thing you can do for tomorrow is to stop producing today. This wasn't laziness, this was stewardship. Stewardship of myself. We often feel like we've been taught, especially as entrepreneurs, that if we're not constantly moving and grinding and working on our business, then we're being lazy. Well, burnout, my friends, is real. And you can burn out before you get to the harvest season in that business if you do not know how to steward your time, your emotions, your mental stability, and your physical capabilities. Because exhaustion does not just affect your body, it affects your judgment, it affects your creativity, it affects your relationships, but it definitely affects your decision making. And sometimes we think we're ready to quit when we're actually ready to sleep. We're ready to rest. We're ready for a break. Let's talk about the pace check. PACE. When the middle starts feeling heavy, remember PACE. P, pause. Don't make any major decisions at the height of exhaustion, anger, embarrassment, disappointment, nor grief. Give yourself some space. A, assess. What is actually wrong? What am I actually feeling? Separate facts from feeling. C, connect. Talk to somebody trustworthy, a mentor, a spouse, a coach, a colleague. But the key is they have to be someone trustworthy. That means that someone that is not going to later on come back and the vulnerability that you showed, turn it back on you and utilize it so they can break you down further. And then finally, E, evaluate. After you have first paused, got yourself some rest, assessed, connected, finally evaluate. Then and only then do you decide, do I stay? Do I shift? Do I step? But now you're deciding from clarity instead of depletion. And let me also tell you that for people that are isolated or people who maybe you have trust issues, so you don't have anyone for you to kind of soundbite information off of because you keep everything in your head, your own mind will turn on you. Your mind was created to protect you. That amygdala, your little fire chief that tells you about the fight or flight, that's not new. That was how we were designed as human beings. And so it's still, no matter how much technology improves, it still holds true today. So that impacts our level of trust of new people, of people that have maybe hurt us or let us down in the past, etc. You tend to think the worst. Well, if yourself is the only sounding board that you have, your mind can easily spiral you into this negative abyss of thinking. Even though you want some positivity to come out of it, it's naturally designed to protect you by showing you all of the warning signs. And that can freeze you and keep you from taking any chances or trying something new or proceeding with your plan because now you've sat alone and thought yourself out of doing something. Anybody ever done that? I mean, because listen, again, I tell you guys, and I'm only talking to you about things that I have experienced or know personally. And I remember my pastor in one of his sermons talked about how, he has a sabbatical. And so he went away and he loves being near the water. He woke up that morning, pulled the curtains open of his room. It was a beautiful day, saw the water. He had this amazing suite and he was all energetic and he started thinking. And he said within 30 minutes, I had thought myself into a depression and I went back to bed. But that's real. That's real. So sometimes just be having yourself as your own sounding board can be equally detrimental as talking to someone that is going to break you down. So just something to keep in mind. So I want to give you a little bit of word about motivation. I want to free you. I want to free you from something. You will not feel motivated every day. I don't. Successful people don't. Entrepreneurs don't. CEOs don't. Athletes don't. Authors don't. People who love their jobs don't. Motivation is an emotion, and emotions fluctuate. Sometimes discipline carries you when motivation disappears. Sometimes purpose drives you. Sometimes your community can support you. And sometimes you just need to rest. The goal isn't to remain constantly excited. The goal is to remain connected enough to yourself and your purpose that you can recognize the difference between this is difficult and this is wrong for me. Two very different experiences and conclusions. I want to take a moment to pause here and just remind you that this is exactly why we built a better way of earning community, because the middle becomes much harder when you believe you are the only person experiencing it. I want our community to become a place where we can talk honestly about the parts of success that didn't make the highlight reels, the doubts, the pivots, the small wins, the questions, the lessons, and yes, the moments when you need someone to remind you that you're still growing. So, after today's episode, join us in a community and answer this question: where are you experiencing the middle right now? And what are you learning while you're there? You don't have to have the answer figured out. Come have the conversation. The information about joining a better way of earning community will be included in today's description. As we close this episode, I want to speak directly to the person who feels tired. Maybe you're doing everything you know how to do. You're showing up, you're learning, you're working, you're trying. But right now, you don't see much happening. Please don't automatically interpret silence as failure. Don't interpret slow as stopped. And do not allow someone else's highlight reel to convince you that your life is behind schedule. You, my friend, may simply be in the middle. And here's something that I've learned: the middle, you guys, develops things that the beginning cannot teach and the destination cannot replace. The beginning gives you vision, the middle develops your capacity to carry it. It develops patience, judgment, discipline, humility, resilience, discernment, skill, character, and yes, career capital. One day, you will look back and realize that the season you were desperately trying to escape was the very season that prepared you for everything you prayed will come next. So don't waste the middle wishing you were somewhere else. Learn there, rest there when necessary, ask questions there, build relationships there, develop skills there, pay attention there. And when it truly becomes time to move, move from wisdom, not desperation. Before we go, please remember this: the public playbook may tell you that if success isn't happening quickly, something must be wrong. Your success blockers may tell you that everyone else is moving faster than you. Neither gets to define your journey. Some seasons are for launching, some seasons are for winning, but some seasons are for resting, and some seasons are for becoming capable of carrying what comes next. Keep learning, keep growing, keep building, and do not be afraid of the middle. Thank you for joining me for another episode of A Better Way of Earning, because success isn't about following someone else's path. It's about building one that works for you. A better way of earning is where work, life, and money come together, helping you build success on your own terms.